Winning Plays is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
All right, welcome in to new edition of the Winning Plays podcast. My name is Robb, and joined today by Chris Forsberg of NBC Sports Boston. Chris,
vibes are back, Brian. Vibes are back, B-Rob.
They're back. Thought about doing this recording earlier this week. Thought about hitting you up on Monday to be like, but then I figured no. We need a measuring stick game to take the temperature of things a little bit more in terms of where this team is right now, and that is what we saw on Tuesday night. And before I forget, this Winning Plays podcast episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. You can go to fanduel.com/Boston, claim your $200 bonus right now. But Chris, when you look at where this team came into Tuesday night's game, how big of a priority did you just place on this game, big picture wise? And I mean, we saw you post game kind of bringing it down on NBC Sports Boston, but like, is there anything to complain about after what we saw there on across all fronts?
Yeah. So look, I was in a dark space after Saturday night. That was a rough game to watch. And I think it just accentuated everything that you've sort of felt over the past, 2 months, since they've sort of been just on the roller coaster. Like some nights it looks really good, but then they let their foot off the gas and it turns bad. And then you lose to the Rockets and you lose to Utah, and the late game execution is terrible and the personnel decisions are terrible. And so I think it was fair to be, slightly concerned about the direction of the team. And now in the same regard, I don't sit here because they beat the Kings and think everything's solved and everything's fixed. It's great that, they get the pep talk from Al and it's all sunshine and puppy dogs and unicorns for one day. I hope they string together a stretch here over the final 9 that gives you a little bit more optimism about where they're going. But it was good that they course corrected so much so quickly. And look, getting Robb back, getting Tatum back, playing at a more efficient level, that solves 90% of your issues. But Joe tightening the rotation and actually locking in on 8 guys was a godsend. That needs to happen more often. The fact that Derek White got so many minutes, and and then the interesting part is just sticking with that lineup. So again, one game. Kings were on a back-to-back. I'm not trying to take anything away from it. It was maybe the first 48-minute effort of the season. Is that crazy to say?
Definitely 2023.
Yeah, so certainly the best effort of post All-Star. Certainly the best effort because in the immediate aftermath, I sat there and I said, "What was the last time they just dominated a game like that?" In terms, and I know they were down 7, but then the middle part of that game they just blew it open. Phoenix, way back when, but one of those Cleveland games they played really.
The Nets game, the Kyrie. The move that made Kyrie ask for a trade that in the early February, 139.96. But you're right. Those have been few and far between.
Feels like 9 years ago. So it is good. It makes me sound slightly more rational to embrace what they're doing.
All right. Well, I agree with all that, but I want to get you've glazed over the most important part of Tuesday night the return of Robert Williams.
Yes, I didn't want to jump the gun, B-Rob.
I know, but this is priority 1, 2, 3, 4 right now for you when you're on these airwaves. So early impressions, both how he looks and we've talked about this before. We talked about this on the Celtics show on Saturday in terms of the bench versus the starting lineup for Robb right now. An easy decision when you bring him back, but now where you expect that to stick, or how do you expect that to be kind of played out here in the rest of the regular season?
So a few things. One, I like that he just kind of eased back in. I thought the most noticeable play for me was, I think Granka called for the foul on the baseline, but Robb jumped twice. Maybe Robb got the foul. I forget what the exact sequence. But the fact that he jumped twice, the double jump, it just said, okay, it's sort of back to what he can do. And I don't even know if he was doing that when he first came back from the knee. And so little things like that make me encouraged about what Robb can do and his health, and didn't seem to be hindered at all by the hamstring. Didn't really do anything above the rim or anything like that, but enough of slips and finishing dunks from Tatum that I'm encouraged.
And by the way, above the rim stuff, that's a good thing. Stay away from the rim for the rest of the season. Until the playoffs, I don't want anything above the rim from him. I don't know if I
did.
Don't do anything stupid. Keep him on the ground. Keep him safe.
I'm not sure I disagree. It's so funny because when we were talking on Saturday, I said the same thing. I was like, I don't care if he plays a ton of minutes. I want him healthy for the playoffs. That's all that matters at this point. You got to get through 9 more games and shake some rust, make this thing look better. The passing, obviously, too. Like when he's out there, it zips and like he just plays hot potato and he wants to get that ball moving. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Celtics had some of their best ball movement in a while when Robb's back out there. Now, the lineup thing. So I don't know if you saw it, but so Abby had the pregame interview with Joe last night and sort of said, how much do you need to see your starting lineup? And he said, well, I don't know if that's our starting lineup. We've started, 61 games or whatever with Derek White this year. And so that's interesting to me because Tatum had talked on the road trip about, that 5 gives him the highest ceiling and, wanting to get back to that lineup and maybe getting some rust off of there, but that health was the priority. I wonder if this is an indication where, in part because of their big depth and in part because, like they're rolling right now and the numbers are great with Derek, maybe they're just going to ride this thing out with the 5 out starting lineup and, pick their spots to go double big. And, I don't even know how much that will be. Maybe there'll be series you have to go double big. Maybe there's like, you feel like you need more size against the Bucks or whatever. And so you go double big, but I'm left wondering if the preferred 5 is no longer the preferred 5.
I'm with you on this, and we've questioned a lot of things with Joe Mazzulla this year, but I think this is a good fact that he's thinking that way right now because, like you said, I think depending on the matchup, that could be the clear cut lineup to go to the old school starting 5. But the Celtics have been at their best this year with Derek White in the starting lineup, going back to the first 2 months of the season, and so you need to rely more on that data right now. I think in terms of playing to your strengths, which is offense, when everything is going right, rather than trying to force your way back into a group that could be great, but we just haven't seen it this year. And that's not. I mean, it's been tiny sample size. It's not to say that that's not going to be an important lamp for this group in the playoffs, because I think it very much will be. But if depending on the matchup, if they like to start small there, it takes care of a lot of the rotational stuff with the bigs. You don't have to worry as much about going to a Blake Griffin or a Luke Cornett and for spot minutes. And I think it protects Robb a little bit too in terms of getting his feet back under him. But I'm not convinced it's the right move. But I would like to. It'd be nice to have that lineup be like the adjustment in a series as opposed to being like the other way around, I feel like.
And that's where I'm at it's, okay, I get it. There's familiarity there. And again, you go back to the numbers. Like you said, it's baffling that what I call the preferred 5, last year's starting 5 has been so poor. I think minus 20 net rating since the All-Star break, when you thought they'd sort of start to find their groove, and yet they've been so bad defensively, and it just makes no sense. And I do wonder what a larger sample size would tell us, but there's no way to get a larger sample size. 2 back-to-backs remaining. Al's going to sit those out. You assume Robb will sit out some portion of them as well. So you know what? You're just not going to get a long look at it. So if the decision is, hey, we're really good with Derek White on the floor and we can accentuate ways to keep Derek White on the floor, and this is one of those ways, like even last night, a ton of minutes for him, even with 3 guards healthy. So
imagine that.
Would you believe it, B-Rob, that I did love that he came back in like essentially crunch time for, even though the game was put away there. And but no, I often wonder, if you gave Joe the true serum, would he admit that it's just like it's been a blind spot at times, or I get the size thing and against the Utah game, but you got to play your best players.
No,
it's no defense, right?
There's no no. Like where the defense was like when it happened in the Knicks game the first time, and then you make and then you say the next time. When the Utah game was just like, we've seen what Luke Cornett looks like in crunch time in these games. This is not an isolated incident where it's like, oh, they stopped being able to score right now and they were getting killed in the glass. Like, yes, this is what Luke Cornett is a fine regular season 10th or 11th guy, in a final like 4th pick. But there's a reason why he doesn't play in these spots. And Derek White is someone you gave up a lot of draft capital for, who is playing really well. And you're playing a Utah team where, guess what, Joe? Like, he's a small ball guy. How does he not go to the small ball in that situation? It's just, I mean, you nailed it. I mean, I loved how just
I lost my mind.
You are on post game. It was warranted. And
so, and I just think it goes back to even in that situation where you're thinking putting a 6'3" guard on the floor is not going to solve your rebounding woes. And that's clearly the biggest issue in the game. They played great offense that game. Like they didn't necessarily need Derek out there for that, but he just makes so many smart plays. He's so able to stay in front of guys. Like I would have felt a lot more comfortable with Derek White preventing a Talon Horton Tucker drive than I would that Luke Cornett on that back line. And having Luke and Muscala in there did nothing to solve the rebounding issue. So at some point you just have to say, all right, in theory, it makes most sense to have size, but in practice, it's probably best to just put our best damn players out here, especially when we don't have Marcus Smart, and just see what happens. And look, I don't know. I would love an alternate universe where we could say, see, Joe, it would have worked, but we don't know. And there's no guarantees, but yeah, it's same deal. Like, people always do that thing where they say, an injury is never a good thing, but you got to see that this guy could like step up and do this. I hope that if there's one positive, it's if they had to lose that game badly, it's a reminder, play Derek White. And I don't know if you saw the number. The number I kept doing last night was 35 minutes, which is a lot of minutes. I don't expect them to hit that number every night in the playoffs, but 13-2 this year. One of those losses was the Milwaukee overtime debacle where they didn't have 4 starters and Derek actually played in overtime, which is ironic. And another like Cleveland OT game. So it bears out. He's just like Tatum, typical Tatum. When he's on the floor, good things happen. Play him a whole bunch. If you play Derek White and Jason Tatum 40 minutes each in the playoffs, you should win the game.
All right, let's take a break here to hear from our sponsor, FanDuel. Massachusetts, listen up. The wait is finally over. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is now live in Massachusetts. And new customers in Mass can get in the action with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So just sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston. And finally, you can bet on all your favorite sports from the money line to point spreads to player props and more right on your phone. You can just download it on the app. The app has everything on there, whether you want to bet on the MVP race, whether you want to bet on playoff odds, or this night's game. You can bet on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. So don't miss out on your chance to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make every moment more on America's #1 sportsbook. You must be 21 and present in Massachusetts. First online real wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel. Sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Hope is here. GamblingHelplineMA.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. And now back to the show. Right. And there will be games where White doesn't have it, and that's fine. And you can pull him like if he's hesitant to shoot threes or whatever, like that's fine. You have good alternatives in those places. But if not, if he's playing a classic Derek White game, like I said, to your point, this is a normal numbers coach and numbers organization, and everything. I mean, there's no doubt that those conversations are being had behind closed doors, but like you said, this may be good in the long run that they had a situation like this, being like, okay, we need to really look closely at this and make sure we are going with the guys we want to roll with at these critical points. And Joe Mazzulla got back to that in Sacramento. Like the team played really well, but guess what? 8-man rotation.
Yes.
Grant, which building off of a great Utah game that was marred by the, 4-alarm fire in the last 10 seconds. But yeah, this is, and I mean, we hit on this a couple weeks ago. It's like, who are you rolling off in the playoffs? Like, who are you wanting to build up right now? And Grant is getting back. The numbers weren't great, but a lot of nice hustle plays, a lot of putbacks in key spots, just doing the little things. That's what you want from Grant in that spot. And then, play Derek White a lot. And Sam Hauser, it's been a fun ride. Like, maybe we'll throw you in here or there for a spark, but it's we need to get everyone in line in terms of how we want to play in a month from now.
And so with all apologies to the Bus One boys, who I love dearly, if you don't see the Bus One boys in the playoff, it's okay. There'll be spots for them. Blake will play maybe some minutes against, if you're lucky enough to see the Bucks along the way. Like you said, I think see Hauser being that, hey, Derek doesn't have it going. No one has it going. Grant's struggling for whatever reason. Throw Hauser in there and maybe get a spark. But outside of that, if you have to lean into the Cornets and Peyton Pritchards of the world, probably not a good sign for where you're at in that moment. So lean on the 8 that we thought were going to be the guys and play everybody in that group big minutes while treading cautiously with your centers, and good things should happen.
They spread around, like, I feel like last night's box score minutes wise was almost like the first, right? Like perfect clear cut.
Yeah.
It took 70 games, but they got there. They got there.
So you did say on Saturday that you thought maybe Joe was slow playing us on all of this, that it was just
right?
Can I now I have to unequivocally say I can't just firmly say that I don't trust that's not a possibility, that he's just running one play, that he's just doing all these things,
everything in the holster,
just to keep everything close to the vest so that they can crank it up a level in the postseason, but better late than never.
The other thing I also want to talk about with Joe after in his post-game press conference after the Sacramento win, he kind of poo-pooed, being like, yeah, listen, if this was a 4-2 road trip at the beginning of the season, everyone, we wouldn't be in first place all year. Everyone would be praising this, pretty much telling everyone who's been on their case over the last couple of weeks to hey, back off. I
don't. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that at all. Listen, this isn't a road trip situation. This is a last 2 or 3 months situation where, right. And number two, Joe, what is the goal right now? Your goal is not to be a second round team that puts together one for, the Gipper and then goes out in a blaze of glory. No, this is you guys have been pretty much the title favorites all year long. And to be fair to him, the Warriors last year to end the regular season, they weren't great. They didn't have
yeah, but they're the Warriors.
Exactly. They have the resume.
Yeah. And that's what I just go back to is, people can be upset and be like, oh, come on. You're not going to have it every night. The Rockets wanted it more that night, and Utah, the size was the issue. Yeah, for sure. Those are all true statements, but we weren't freaking out about those 2 losses in a vacuum. We were freaking out about the fact that there has been slippage for 2.5 months and a pattern of over a half season of data that suggests the Celtics are not nearly the title contender that we thought they were at the start of the year. And last night is a refreshing dive back closer to what they can be and what they need to be if they're going to have success in the playoffs. And so I don't think it's asking a lot to just be that more often. Put yourselves in the best position to win in those moments by leaning on your best players. Just have a little bit of momentum going into the playoffs, because it sure felt like, they needed a little bit of juice, and however they need to find it. And whether it's the season's changing and Jaylen Brown saying the energy shifting again or whatever, bottle up whatever you want.
All right, we're going to wrap up on Jaylen in a second here. One other thing, we haven't even mentioned, I think, Tatum yet, in terms of what he looked like on Tuesday night in that game. I kind of compared it to Paul Pierce back in the day when he just would feast on smaller defenders in the post and stuff like that. And I know Sacramento's a trash defensive team, so it's tough to take anything out of that. When okay, he's not gonna be able to do that against any playoff team in the East,
right? But
that type of bully ball we just haven't seen from him in a while here. And I don't know whether someone, like you said, how Horford talked to these guys, or someone else got in his ear to be listen, if the 3 is not working, man, you can get 40 in other ways here.
I think it's more if you look at Tatum's pattern, it's when the opposing team doesn't have backline defense, he's just different in terms of aggression. It's he sees Sabonis and he says, he can't stop me. And, looks at the other defenders and is aggressive. He needs to have that mindset even when Giannis and Brook Lopez are on that back line. And that I can't, that you have to attack more, and that you can't just settle for 3s. And so I think that's I need to see. That's why I can't take anything out of a 1-game sample, because that's a bad defensive team. Now, it's great that you bottled up their offense and did what you did. But I need to see Tatum put together a string of games here. And really, the less we talk about Tatum, the better, because that means he's just doing what Tatum does and super efficient. And same thing. We got done last night and the Jays paired up for 66 points. And it's oh yeah, they're great. It's just what they do now. And so, hopefully hopefully it continues. And that means the Celtics are in a good spot if they just if they do it. But yeah, he needs to be aggressive, like regardless of who's back there. I think that's the number one thing I would love to see from Tatum to the finish line of the season. Trying to think like the Bucks game, obviously going up against Embiid, don't lose your aggression based on how good the defense is in the front line.
111 combined points for the starters in that game. Again, that was as perfect of an offense performance as you'll see all season when you factor in 3 turnovers and the
and I can't believe it took us that long to get the turnovers. Yeah. Like that was the best.
Or 5 turnovers. I'm sorry, I misread that.
Yeah, 5, but 3 live. I think 3 live ball.
Yeah.
It's unreal. Like, I mean, it's just a reminder of how good they can be offensively when they take care of the ball. Like I didn't think it was like exceptional offensive level. It's just really, really crisp and efficient. And all of a sudden you look up and they're like, whoa, 132. Okay. That's what you do.
It does. All right, let's wrap here on the Jaylen Brown quote unquote situation, i.e. laying out the what everyone just saying out loud what everyone saw kind of coming, I guess, in terms of like, yes, Jaylen Brown probably feels hurt by years and years of trade rumors. Yet Jaylen Brown is not going to commit to signing with a team as of when he can't sign the most possible money, right, which is totally reasonable stances and smart stances to take for any free agent. There was more there. He obviously, and this is obviously the piece on the Ringer. Go check it out if you haven't seen it in the last 24 hours. But there was a lot in here. So I guess I'll just throw it to you. Like, what out of everything you saw in here, like what, if anything, kind of stuck out to you in terms of what he said, or what either Brad or Kyrie, anything?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the number one takeaway obviously is like you come away and you're thinking when you read the quotes, you're like, oh, like does he love being in Boston? And we have to remember he is being asked these questions about his future, and that I don't know if there's any way. And he had a great line I think at some point in that Ringer piece where he said, I don't even want to answer this because Boston fans are gonna freak out no matter what I say. And like it's true. Like he could be like, I want to be here forever, but he can't say that until he knows he's going to get the money and that he is a focal point. And you balance that with the fact that he has sort of not been the go-to guy at the end of games. And he's had like pockets of moments, but the Utah game accentuated it. Tatum's terrible in that game, and he gets both the final plays were supposed to be for him on that 2-for-1. So I can understand his roller coaster of emotions in Boston. And just like you said, the trade rumors and all that. I'm glad that Jaylen's line last night when he was sort of confronted about it was, I'm not going to throw any more gasoline on this fire. I have thoughts, but I'm not sharing them now. Like, let's get through this, because ultimately, if he does land on an all NBA team, and I'm curious your thoughts on whether that will actually happen. He's going to get $290 million and he'll sign the deal and he'll be here for 7 years. And everything will be hunky dory. If he doesn't get all NBA, and we'll see what happens with the TV rights and the next CBA and all that, and there's still a pathway to retaining him at tons of money. But yeah, there's some uncertainty right now in terms of none of these things are guaranteed. He also has to want to be here. He could wake up and he could sign a deal and then be like, I want to go play somewhere else. People do that all the time. I don't suspect that's going to happen, and I don't think Celtics fans should worry themselves about it. I think Jaylen typically comes from a good place when he's trying to either, whether it's standing up for Kyrie and, the missteps that he makes aren't like malicious. He often tries to he's looking out for people, for friends, for things he believes in. And sometimes he just goes awry and, doesn't understand the consequences of what he says might, fall back on him a little bit. And so that's my big takeaway, is that he's being asked tough questions. He's giving some fairly honest answers, but I don't read anything much more into it about his future. I still think, especially if he gets all NBA, he's here for 5 more years tacked on with the year that's left. So it's going to be a while.
Yeah, and with so much in play here from a team standpoint, and obviously from the future CBA, like you mentioned, where he can, that's when these questions become far more pressing and immediate. But now, I mean, the timing was just bad in terms of the Celtics had a rough go of it the last 2 months, and now, this article drops before things kind of come back together in Sacramento on Tuesday night, that magnifies it. But it is, it does place an extra, like, beyond thing, like, well, where does he want to play going forward? Like, it sounds like he's been pretty good that he wants to win. So if the Celtics win or get back to the finals, it's harder to even envision in a scenario where, even if he can't sign that extension, that he's going to go somewhere else, because there's going to be very few places out there that offer him as good a chance of winning as the Celtics. Maybe you can count them on one hand, if that. So from that standpoint, that's clearly probably what the organization is most worried about right now with him. I do think you do wonder, when you hear like the Kevin Durant trade rumors, the three-way call of Brad and Tatum, you hear that stuff and you're like, well, why was he the one to initiate that call? Stuff like that. You wonder, like, in hindsight, it's like, maybe they should have gotten out in front of this a little bit more. But at the same time,
and I wonder that too. Like, Brad's usually very proactive about that. We'll never know the full story about, but I think you do have to be, like, if you're Brad and that stuff's going on, you got to be the first one to make that call. You can't be sitting there waiting for Brown to initiate. Do you think he gets all NBA this year? Have you started crunching?
I haven't looked too deep. It seems from just what I've been observing and reading around on people talking about, like, guard is just not going to happen because there's too many guards. Forward, with all the injuries there, seems like a possibility. And honestly, it probably depends a lot on how the season ends for the Celtics and how the next 8 games go, because he could, with Durant and LeBron, if those guys don't reappear and they're under 50 games, and then, they'll get some votes, but that's clearly a window for Jaylen to get in that spot. But I haven't really dug super deep in terms of how he stacks up with, like, the borderline candidates.
Yeah, and it just feels like every time I sort of sit there and I do it in my head, I say, okay, this guy, I think there's room for him. And then, you forget SGA and, like, guys that have had really good seasons that maybe don't just pop off the page because they're on weaker teams. Like, SGA deserves to be on there. And so he's probably going to be, and that's okay. That's fine, even though his team didn't win a whole lot. And but yeah, I got to check into the whole how does he qualify?
The whole guard final. Like, I don't know. Like, we'll talk to the league on that stuff. I feel like that will get some. That's stuff that obviously doesn't matter, but it did honestly matter a couple years ago for Tatum when he, got more votes than Kyrie, but he was a forward instead of a guard that year, so he didn't get it.
And and what was if I'm remembering right, it was because, essentially he slotted on X amount of ballots as a guard or a forward. And, like,
and so that's a category. You're right. That's what it is. It's like, that's the category. If you're placed more as a forward than a guard in the ballots, and that's what you're put in as. Like, that's where your votes go towards.
And so, it could be crazy for Jaylen if he spots on, like, if some people muscle him in as a guard, but he doesn't get, essentially credit for it. I don't know. So we're going to have to, that's just something to keep an eye on. It's he's certainly in the mix. He certainly, probably deserves a bigger spotlight on that. And I suspect the Celtics should, probably start hammering that drum and putting out the full court press on that.
Why? Well, this also tells you why Rob Williams is not going to be starting the rest of the year. So Derek White starts, and Jaylen is a forward in that lineup.
Oh, interesting. Conspiracy B-Rob back again.
Is, of course Jaylen's a forward.
Joe Mazzulla,
Derek White and Marcus Smart.
Joe Mazzulla is playing checkers. Chess, and we're just all playing checkers. And he is, he's got it all mapped up. He know how to make the candidacy work. And honestly, like, if I'm guessing why Jaylen did some of these media tours, and it's clear he talked to the Ringer, like, previously earlier in the year.
This was months ago. That was probably.
But, like, I saw Sopan down in Houston. He bombed in and got Jaylen at the hotel. So it's clearly, like, the team had been okay with setting that up and stuff like that. Part of it is being out in the spotlight and accentuating his season and all that. It's too bad that his play isn't more the focal point of what this is. But no press is bad press, I guess. So as long as he's in a spotlight and our voters get a little bit of a reminder of what he's doing, maybe it'll help his case here at the finish line.
All right, wrap up on this. What's your gut say in terms of where they finish right now? Game ahead of the Sixers. 6 at home, 3 away coming up, but all 3 roadies are tough ones.
I'm more worried about the homes. Like,
it's true.
The Wizards, Spurs, and Pacers are the ones that tended to trip up this team. So much will hinge on specifically that first game. So they go up to Milwaukee on Thursday of next week.
Yes.
All right. Yeah.
They go Washington and then Milwaukee next week.
Right.
That's a road trip.
So I suspect they'll go full lineup that night. Like you'll have Al on the front night of a back-to-back. I assume, even though you could stagger and play Robb the second night, I think you just got to go all out for that matchup, especially after you
need that
pull the plug, the last one. And so if they win that, it does open the door to the one. I know Milwaukee's schedule isn't particularly daunting. Philadelphia is already bitching about how tough its schedule is. I heard Doc crying about it again. Jesus, it's always something down there. That's why I just can't take that team seriously. So my gut says 2, but I'm eager to see how it looks against Milwaukee and just how much motivation this team has after this little bump in the road. And, against part of that could be how the next 3 games go. If you win all 3 of those and now you're on a 4-game winning streak and you're feeling good, maybe that helps you as you head up to Milwaukee and with a chance to legitimately make a play for that 1 seed. Although, what is our this is another thing that we need to start worrying about. No, I don't know if worry is the right word, but what is the best seed? Is the 1 seed and getting the play-in loser or the number 2 seed? Do you have a preference based on what's how it's stacking up so far?
I mean, yeah, ones I would do. I think honestly, your ideal seed is not playing the Heat in the first round,
right?
For just the degree of difficulty that typical series could play on you. The 1 versus 2, yeah, you want home court against Milwaukee, but as far as opponents go, that's a complete crapshoot in terms of who you're going to get there. And so if Miami, I think the key thing is if Miami gets into that 6, which it looks like it's going to happen, then you really don't want to drop down to the 3 and face them in the first round and then have to go on the road in round 2, because that's the path where I think you run into, the most trouble.
Far be it from me to say that we should not be trying to get a Florida team in round 1 based on my weather preferences. But I think I agree. In Atlanta wouldn't be a bad, the trend. They're probably going to be what? They'll be 7. 8 would be.
It could be anyone. I mean, it's
Brooklyn or
Brooklyn. Yeah, who is Brooklyn going to win those playing games? I don't know. And then you have Chicago kind of coming up the rear with they're playing a little better since they got Beverly. True. So Toronto. I mean, it could be on Toronto. I mean, Toronto could be a tough series.
Weather and the Celtics don't play well up there, and I know that they're not as formidable as they have in the past, but still Siakam can get you going. So long story short, I think you much like they did last year, you let seeding play itself out, but with the idea that you're trying to go strong to the finish line and win that game up there. All of a sudden you get the tiebreaker. It eases the path to potentially get back into that 1 seed. And wouldn't that be just the way it is? If we all lost our minds for 2.5 months and then these guys, I almost call them jerks, but these guys go and stumble their way into or fight their way into the 1 seed and all is well with the world. And then it'll just come out that Joe was slow playing us all and knew all along he could just get these guys to ramp up it late. And I don't know. We'll see if it all works out in the end.
Wouldn't put it past him. I know at this point. All right. That'll do it for this edition of the Wing Plays Pod, brought to you by FanDuel. Make sure you're checking out Chris Forsberg, as always, on the Celtics Talk podcast. Celtics post-up coming up today.
And I think I haven't decided yet, B-Rob, but I think we're going full Robert Williams for the Forsberg 4, which means I just get to glow about Rob for 4 uninterrupted minutes for no other reason than I selfishly want to do that.
It's as far as you should do the whole half hour. Just forget everything else. Rob's back. Let me program the show. Rob's back. Exactly. It's a matter of time, but make sure you're checking that out as well. And we will catch you guys later this week when the Celtics are back in town.